And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines and simple keywords with Adam joining us on the line. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday indeed. How was your weekend?
Oh, very, very eventful and very dusty.
Dusty?
Yeah.
It
There's a lot of
was...
flower
Oh,
pollination
pollen. I
things.
was like, do
Yeah.
we live in different cities? I
No, no,
was
no,
I
no,
was
no, no,
expecting,
no,
I saw
no.
blue skies and the air was crisp and relatively
Right.
clean.
I apologize. I think dusty was the wrong word. Very polleny, if that's the word.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. And anyone
Yeah.
who's prone to allergies, I think that's a
Yeah.
clear warning that is extended to this Monday morning too. All
So if my
right.
voice sounds a little bit different than usual, then you know why.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into keyword news this morning. We're going to take a look at some of these major headlines and hopefully clarify it for you. Starting right here at home for us, this is our first pick of the day.
Speech to Parliament.
So President Yoon Suk-yeol is scheduled to make a parliamentary speech on his proposed extra budget later today. What can we expect?
Yeah, well, it will be his first speech, of course, as the new president to Parliament. He's expected to urge parties on the passage of the extra budget bill. Yoon will likely stress that the passage is needed to help smaller businesses and self-employed people that have been hit by the pandemic. That is basically the main aim of this extra budget. Now, the president is also scheduled to meet with the floor leaders of the rival parties before the speech to call for the approval of his prime minister nominee, Han Duck-soo, as well as other stuff as well. And he's also expected to call for cooperation in other state affairs. Yoon is also reportedly pushing for a meeting with the leaders of the rival parties after the speech as well to talk about similar things, I guess. Whether they'll be meeting all together remains to be seen. Whether either one of the meetings will happen or the other won't also remains to be seen. We'll have to wait just a few hours because that's when the speech happens. But yes, the budget and calls for approving it will be the main things of the speech.
All right. As for the nature of that extra budget and the political and economic angles that it seems, we'll get the details on actually in the second hour today with an economist takeaway with Professor Yang Jun-seok, because there seems to be some point of contention as to timing of it all. I mean, of course, we have an important regional election coming up on June 1st, but that doesn't mean it's not needed. So what's the tug of war? We'll elaborate a little bit more in our second hour. As for the speech, as Adam said, wait a few hours. Let's jump into our second keyword of the day.
Yoon-Biden summit.
So eyes are, of course, fixated on the upcoming summit between Yoon Suk-yeol and his U.S. Counterpart, President Joe Biden. What will be discussed? What's on the agenda so far?
Right. Well, there's kind of three key issues, or three pillars, if you will, that are up for discussion according to the presidential office. That'll be North Korea's provocations, as well as economic security, and also how to ratchet up bilateral relationship as well. Now, a presidential official said they will talk about strategies for responding to North Korean provocations and ways to manage related situations. They will also discuss bilateral cooperation in supply chain issues, emerging technologies, and other topics related to economic security. Also, on the agenda is South Korea's contributions to pressing international issues and how to contribute to them, or coordinate them, rather. Now, in particular, the official said that Yoon intends to elevate the South Korea-US alliance to a higher level than before. There have been some criticisms that the Moon Jae-in administration, or during Moon's time in office, the relationship between the allies kind of deteriorated, mostly due to maybe some kind of finding middle ground between the US and China tensions,
Right.
and with North Korea talks being stagnant as well.
Right.
But Yoon Suk-yeol is obviously trying to bring that alliance back to recovery. Now, at the same time, sharing a vision for a comprehensive strategic alliance and rebuilding a combined defense posture are also key goals for the summit, according to the presidential office. In answer to a reporter's question about whether vaccine aid to North Korea could be on the agenda, the official replied, quote, "We have established a policy to support vaccines and medicines. We are waiting to see if North Korea will accept them." So it certainly seems like the door is open and they are willing to help. The summit and press conferences related to it will be held at the presidential office in Yongsan. It will be the first major foreign guest at this new presidential office when Biden does arrive. Now, on speculation that Yoon may make a reciprocal visit to the US next month, the official actually said there were currently no plans for the president to visit the US in June. Now, Biden's visit to Korea comes ahead of a US-Japan summit and the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad as it's known for short.
Right.
And the official said that the fact that Biden is visiting Korea before these meetings shows the importance of the alliance. Now, when does this all take place? May 21st, and Biden will depart for Japan on May 22nd.
All right. Let's also take a look at our pandemic coverage. This is our third keyword of the day.
Return to normalcy.
I mean, we've been throwing that word around so much that, I tread carefully, but this is according to Korean health officials set to discuss a possible return to normalcy from today. A further step to normalcy, I suppose. What can we expect?
Right. Well, this is all coming as the downward trend of infections is, of course, continuing. New cases are staying below the 20,000 mark for 2 straight days now. Most social distancing rules have also been lifted. On Friday, the latest one, Korea announced a plan to ease requirements to enter the country. That's a move basically to boost convenience for inbound travelers and get the travel industry back on track. Starting May 23rd, the government will recognize negative rapid antigen test results for travelers boarding flights to South Korea on top of these PCR test results that are being accepted at the moment. Still, though, rapid antigen tests, they must be carried out by medical officials or professionals 24 hours before arrival in Korea. Now, currently, pretty much the only social distancing measure in place is the indoor mask mandate, and health authorities are set to make some critical decisions regarding the government's plan on a phased return to normalcy, phased being the key word there. But these meetings are kind of taking place with the appointment of a new health minister still in limbo. I mean, the KDCA held some main meetings when the health minister position was still vacant. So there's a bit of uncertainty there. There are also some mixed opinions among health experts on how the government should approach what is essentially the endemic phase. Now, one of the contentious issues is this lifting of quarantine for infected patients. Some experts say there is enough people in the country vaccinated and who have received natural immunity through infection to kind of alleviate concerns of further infection. Others say it's a bit still too soon and that there's still risk of another outbreak, which of course would take a toll on the medical system and businesses and things like that. And of course, health officials will be collecting these various opinions and more when discussing the next phase of the pandemic, or endemic, should we say, from today. So we'll have to see what comes out.
All right, and on to our fourth keyword of the day.
Pandemic hits North Korea.
So, pandemic situation in North Korea has worsened with almost 300,000 more people showing symptoms and 15 additional deaths related to a virus. That's according to the state's official news agency, right? What's the latest?
Yeah, so this is all coming as the country entered the 4th day of a nationwide lockdown. According to state media, just under 300,000 people nationwide, as you said, came down with what they're calling fever symptoms between Friday evening and Saturday 6 p.m. 15 more deaths were also reported as well. Now, the total number of people who have shown fever symptoms between the end of April and Saturday, in fact, is around 820,000, and about 500,000 are said to have recovered. Some 324,000 are receiving treatment, while a total of 42 people have died. Now, state media has blamed the deaths on flawed administration of medication due to what it's calling a lack of understanding of the contagion and appropriate treatment methods. And state media reported that the country is taking swift state emergency measures. Observers believe that these mass rallies and parades marking key regime and military anniversaries in April and May especially could have contributed to the spread, particularly in Pyongyang, where of course, these larger celebrations are held, and there's a whole massive collection of people. Now, while it is difficult to trace the exact route of viral transmission in the north, the first acknowledged cases appear to coincide with the massive military parade that was held on April 25th. However, the outbreak has not stopped, of course, Kim Jong-un from ordering officials to push forward with major state-led construction and agricultural projects, and even weapon tests as well. We've had 3 missile launches just recently after that confirmation, didn't we?
That's right. As far as those numbers are coming out of KCNA goes, I mean, there's a number of reasons for us to raise red flags and questions about it because there's not, from what I understand, proper testing methods being conducted in North Korea. They don't have test kits, right? So these are all based on symptoms only, like you said, but fixated on fever more than anything else. So we'll have to take that with a grain of salt, more so than usual. Now, as for much needed then aid that would be required for North Korea to tackle this pandemic, is South Korea planning to help the North?
Well, Seoul is certainly open to it. It says South Korea is preparing to make a formal offer of practical assistance, they're calling, to help with the North's anti-disease measures, although it did say that it hadn't made contact yet. Now, President Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday actually said his government was prepared to supply the North with vaccine aid and medicines necessary to deal with the crisis. Now, the offer, if accepted by North Korea, would mark the first talks, if there are any to happen, between the two Koreas after Yoon Suk-yeol took office last week. Still, though, it does remain unclear and possibly unlikely that the North will come forward for talks with South Korea, especially amid these tensions over the North's recent weapons tests and some recent inter-Korean tensions as well. North Korea has apparently, though, asked China for assistance in its battle against the pandemic. Yonhap cited a diplomatic source as saying that Pyongyang recently used its diplomatic channel to reach out to Beijing for COVID-19 supplies and equipment, and apparently talks between the two sides are ongoing. Now, it wasn't immediately clear specifically what North Korea is seeking. Excuse me. So we need to get some more updates on that. And the border actually remains closed between the two countries, but they are expected to temporarily open if and when the two sides agree on specifics of China's assistance.
All right. And with that, we'll move on to our final keyword of the day.
India stops wheat exports.
So India has banned wheat exports after its hottest March on record hit production. This is a blow to countries reeling from supply shortages overall and soaring prices since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It seems that there are countries that are depending on India's supplies. What's the latest?
Right. Well, as you mentioned in the headlines, a notice in the government gazette said a rising global prices for wheat was threatening the food security of India, as well as neighboring and vulnerable countries. And now, excuse me, a key aim is to control rising domestic prices of wheat in the country. Global wheat prices have increased by more than 40% since the beginning of the year. But the Indian government said it would still allow exports for previous deals and on the request from countries that are basically trying to meet their own food security needs. So it's basically saying that we'll still export to countries that need it. Global buyers were actually banking on the world's second biggest wheat producer for supplies after exports from the Black Sea region plunged following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, prior to the ban, India was targeting to ship about a record 10 million tons this year. And this Indian ban could actually drive up global prices even further to new highs and hit poor consumers in Asia and Africa. Even though it is the world's second largest producer of wheat, India pretty much consumes most of the wheat it produces because it has such a large population as well. It wasn't received or welcomed by the major developed countries. These G7 nations condemned the decision. But Indian officials did leave open the possibility that the ban could be revised. So we'll have to see. And this all comes, of course, amid these high inflation concerns. And of course, there's been a series of food protectionism around the world as well, not just India. Indonesia, for one, has halted palm oil exports. Serbia and Kazakhstan, they've imposed quotas on grain shipments as well. So it's basically all these countries trying to look out for their own. But of course, it is being met with some condemnation from the international community.
Thank you so much, Arirang, for today's coverage. Go have some warm glass of water, maybe.
Yes, I need it.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.